I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo. And
good afternoon,
Columbus. Good evening, Bowling Green. And hello to everyone on the internet, whenever and wherever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and Rebecca and I are going to craft yet another unbelievable hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your co-workers and the fireflies and the mosquitoes and the gnats and the bumblebees and all those little flying bugs that we got so much of right now. Because, like it or not, we and they are all wrapped up together on this tiny little planet called Earth. And we have a typically high-quality show for you today. We're going to chat for just another 10 minutes or so about various things, and feel free to jump in at any time, 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007, and about any ecological topic that's at the top of your mind. And then we have an interesting guest, Kelly Ramsey. And Kelly is a woman who spent 2 years on a hotshot firefighting team, going all over the west and the north and the southwest fighting fires. And she wrote a nice book about it, and so we're going to be talking about her book. Then we hear from our wonderful advertisers and patrons. And then, Rebecca, what will you be talking about this week?
I will be doing a segment on bamboo and fireworks called Bam Boom.
Okay. All right, that's clever. All right, Bam Boom. All right. Okay, and then it's ecological news from around the world. And I tried to get a little upbeat this week. I found some really good news from various places because, you know, we have enough doom and gloom, right? I don't need to pile on more than is necessary. So we've got some good news worth sticking around for. And as I say, looking forward, hopefully, to hearing from you at some point during this hour. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was fireflies. This seems to be, at least around my place in Bowling Green and in the city in general, seems to be a really good year for fireflies. I've been out in the evenings walking my dog, and I see thousands of them. And I don't know if there's a meme going around saying, this may be the last year we ever see fireflies. And luckily, that's not true, at least not in Bowling Green. But I think part of the reason it's so good is that we had so much time where you couldn't mow your lawn because it was either pouring rain or it was too brutally hot to be out there, that the sort of the fireflies need some degree of sort of tall grass, tall plants to hang out in while they're flickering around. I guess it's the males are the ones that are flying around, and the females sort of perch themselves on a plant or something and are like, impress me.
There you go.
And so So if you have a perfectly really short grass and the perfectly mowed lawn and so forth, you don't have as many fireflies as you do if there's a little bit of shagginess on the edges there. So, and we've all got lots of shagginess this year because it's been so wet and hot. But it's been really nice to see the fireflies. And I was actually out trying to mow the lawn. I have an electric lawnmower, and it's got this really bright LED headlight, and it was getting kind of late, and I turned on the LED headlight, and a firefly actually hopped on top of my lawnmower and started blinking, kind of like, it's time for us to come out now.
Right.
You can stop mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
And,
Our turn.
right. And sort of like, I accept any excuse to stop mowing my lawn. So I pulled it in and just spent some time just watching them that night.
I love those. I remember
Yeah.
when I used to walk around downtown by the river, like they would come out in the shadows first. It was like when it was getting towards dusk that they'd start in the shadows of the bushes of like the big buildings downtown.
Right, where it's a little darker, yeah.
And it looked like they were doing a little gavotte there with their sort of bobbing around. It looked like something out of Jane Austen to me, the way they were moving.
Yeah, well, they're trying to impress those females.
Yes, there you go.
For judging them. So what do you think? Do you agree with me? This is a good year for fireflies, or are you not seeing any? Do you agree with that meme that says this may be the last year we ever see fireflies? Give us a call, 877-909-1007. So this week was also for me sort of the culmination of months of work. There's a group in Bowling Green called SONG, Save Our Neighborhoods Group, and they have a subgroup called Climate Action Team. And I've been working with the Climate Action Team for months because Bowling Green has a penalty, although we call it now, to be politically correct, we're calling it a surcharge on having solar panels on your roof. And so what we did was we took data from 3 systems, and we looked back over the past 4 years since they instituted this surcharge, and discovered that the city's rationale for having it is completely false. That the city claimed that because people who have solar aren't buying every single kilowatt hour from the city loses revenue, and that is not fair for keeping up the poles and the wires and stuff. But what the city does is it buys the excess solar at 7 cents a kilowatt hour and resells it at 13 cents. And we've proven with 4 years of data that the city makes much more profit doing that every week or every month than it loses because people aren't buying every single kilowatt hour, especially in times like these where the peak price of power has gotten so high that Bowling Green actually asked all its utility customers to stop using power, to turn down, make the house hotter, use electricity, because the prices were shooting up so high. And those are exactly the times that the solar panels are putting the most power back on the grid.
Yep.
And so to claim that somehow solar owners aren't doing their fair share is just totally false, total BS. And that was just one part of this big overall presentation we did, talking about the importance of resiliency in terms of if you have solar and battery backup and there's a disaster, your house might be the only one in a block where people can actually get air conditioning or recharge their cell phones. And that becomes very important in crisis situations. And it's kind of interesting because one of the things that one of the panel municipal board members asked me after my presentation, we started talking about California and Texas and how they've gone big time into solar. And he said, well, California and Texas have some of the highest electric costs in the country. And I was able to point out, well, in California's case, that's because the regulator, the California Public Utilities Commission, is wholly captured by the utility companies they're supposed to be regulating.
Mm-hmm.
And they approve every rate increase, and which is why the utilities are making record profits over there in California, while the prices keep going up.
Nothing to do about how much things actually cost.
Exactly. But Texas is a case where the reason they've got so much solar is that they had that huge winter storm a few years ago where millions of people had to go a week or even more than a week in sub-freezing temperatures with no electricity and no heat. And 250, about 250 people actually died in that winter storm because they had no heat. And Texas, they didn't know how to handle the cold.
Yeah.
And so reason I wanted to really mention that is while we up here in the north and the Midwest and the Northeast are being asked to turn our air conditioning to hot, Texas actually had negative pricing. I mean, at the same time
Wow.
that we didn't have enough power, that there were warnings from the PJM, from the grid, that the demand was going to exceed the supply. In Texas, because they had so much solar, the supply actually exceeded the demand so much that they were literally paying companies and people to take the electricity because they're like, we're generating so much, we don't know what to do with it. And so,
Wow.
that whole myth of, if you dump nukes, you'll freeze in the dark, or, you won't have enough power if you go to solar. It's exactly the opposite. The places that have the most solar have the most power, and us here in backwoods Ohio, where we're relying on coal and nuclear and other 20th century technologies, or in place of coal, 19th century technologies, we are short on power, while the places with solar and wind have excess power. So that's just a little something to keep in mind, a nice point we were able to make during this presentation. And we made a lot of really nice points. It's available on YouTube. Just search for the Bowling Green Municipal Utilities, and the whole thing is there. And we've gotten a lot of nice comments. A lot of people who watched the video or came to the thing said, you just blew them out of the water. You made the case. And it's like, how can you even argue with that? And of course, the answer is that Bowling Green, in particular, the Director of Public Utilities, isn't arguing with that. He actually had an interview the following Friday on this very topic. And in that interview, he just sidestepped our arguments completely. He didn't actually address any of the points we made, but he mischaracterized what we were asking for. He said that what we were complaining about was that our reimbursement rate of 7 cents per kilowatt hour wasn't high enough, and nobody said that. Literally, you can watch the videos yourselves. Nobody said that's unfair. All we've been saying from the very beginning is the electric facilities charge, the extra bill they add onto the solar owners, that's what's unfair, and that's what needs to be removed. But he completely dodged the question, and so, when you start getting really shifty like that in your answers, it's because you don't have anything to actually stand on. So anyway, back to some of the things we usually talk about here. Our update on the Canadian wildfire status. Right now, 196 wildfires burning in Canada, 64 of them out of control. That's 3.5 times the normal number of fires. And that's using a 10-year average, though, of course. If you were to average it out over the whole 20th century, for example, you'd be a lot more than 3.5 times average, because the average has been moving up like rapidly because they've gotten so many fires out there. And the country, Canada, remains at level 5, which is everything they've got is committed to trying to protect these communities and slow these fires down and stop them. And so it's very timely that we managed to get an interview with Kelly Ramsey, who has spent 2 years of her life on a hotshot fire team fighting some of the worst fires in American history. And so it was a very interesting interview, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we're done. But let's hear from Kelly
Well,
now.
hello and welcome to For a Green Future. Could you please share with us your name and the title of your book?
Sure. My name is Kelly Ramsey, and my book is called Wildfire Days, A Woman, a Hotshot Crew, and the Burning American West.
So it's a very interesting book. I've enjoyed reading it. It's a very
personal book and has a lot, it has a wealth of detail. I mean, even going down to like what clothes people are wearing at different points. Um, how did you document this? Did you take a lot of notes or a lot of pictures, or do you just have like a great memory?
No, I don't have a great memory at all. I took almost compulsive notes in my phone in the Notes app. Yeah, just writing down what had happened on a given day, things people said or conversations that happened, and yeah, what fire we were on, what day of the fire, everything kind of. And after 2 seasons, when I took those notes out of the app and put them into a Word document, I had 50,000 words of notes. So,
Mhm.
yeah, otherwise, I don't think I would ever have remembered with that kind of detail.
Right. And so were you thinking about writing a book from the beginning of your experiences, or were you just sort of journaling and then at the end you said, wow, look at all this information I've got?
A little bit of both. So I was not thinking about writing a book from the beginning at all. I was just trying to survive the job. But I am a writer, and I had gone to school for writing many years before. So it's just kind of a like a compulsive thing that I do as a writer to record what's happening, in a journal or otherwise, especially if it's something, extraordinary or fascinating or a lot of things I saw were upsetting or scary. So
Mhm.
um, when it's anything like that, I just will be recording what's happening for no real reason other than that's how I process the world. So
Right.
I started doing that, and then probably between my 2 seasons of Fighting Fire, I knew there were already a lot of notes, and I thought like, oh well, I am a writer. This has been such a wild experience. Probably I should end up writing about this, but I didn't know what form it would take or what it would end up being.
Okay. Well, I gotta say, a lot of the book, a lot of your personal reflections as you were going along, had to do with essentially the physical challenge of what you were experiencing, you know. Could you just give us a little bit of detail on the sorts of things you were expected to be able to do as a firefighter?
Sure, yeah. So at the most basic level, you need to be able to hike up a very steep slope carrying a minimum of 45 pounds in your line gear, which is your firefighting backpack. But that's kind of really the baseline, and you're almost never just carrying the 45 pounds. So you're usually carrying also a chainsaw or some fuel or, some other type of tool that will make it more like 60 or 70 pounds. So that's one part of it. And then you also need to be able to run sprints, run hills, do pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and dips and planks and leg lifts. So there's a lot of physical training, and then also, like actual weightlifting. So you need to be able to have speed and endurance while carrying heavy weight. And then you also need to have just kind of strength, physical strength to be able to like lift and move all these heavy things and then to be able to dig and construct fire line for 16 to 24 hours at a time.
Hmm. Wow, that is pretty intense. I guess that's about as intense as it gets.
That's
Um,
fair.
so you travel to a lot of different places as a quote unquote hot shot. Could you kind of tell us the difference between a hot shot crew like you were on and sort of a regular firefighting crew, and then sort of give us an overview of the sorts of places that you travel to?
Sure. Yeah. So a hotshot crew is an elite squad of wildland firefighters. So they are qualified and trained at a higher level in order to be able to go to the most remote or difficult or dangerous assignments on a wildfire. A lot of times they also have extra training in the technical side of the job. So um, something like a backfire or a burnout, which is when we put fire on the ground intentionally to burn the landscape in advance of the oncoming wildfire. Hotshots are really specialized in something like that. Yeah, so with that crew, hotshot crews are federal crews, and they also are authorized to go anywhere in the country and even overseas. So my 2 years, we basically went to the Southwest, to Arizona, and then to a lot of fires throughout Northern California. Since then, like for example, the crew that I was on is now in Alaska right now fighting fires. And sometimes they'll go to Canada. You can really get sent anywhere that you're needed. But a lot of times, because Northern California has so much wildfire, after the first month or so of the season, we start getting fires, more locally. I say that it's within like, several hundred miles, but we'd start getting fires more locally, and then we would kind of just be going all around Northern California to these, massive wildfires.
Hmm. So you have been to some of the most remote forests in the country. Um, does having looking at those things from the point of view of a firefighter, has that sort of changed your appreciation of the natural surroundings?
Yeah, it has. I would say that for one thing, I I have and this is like not necessarily good, but I have this terrible habit now of seeing every forest that I'm looking at in terms of its potential as fuel for a wildfire. So, I'm in Southern California right now traveling, and I'll look at a hillside that's packed with brush, and I'll think about how hot it would burn, how quickly it would burn, which way fire would move across the landscape. And I find myself doing that unconsciously all the time. Like driving along the highway, you're looking at the edge of the highway, you see a forest, and you're like, oh, that forest is really dense, that's really thick. Like that would burn badly. So that's one way. But then also, I have learned a lot about nature's resilience and about how ecosystems respond to the destruction of wildfire. So in some cases, you do see really sad levels of destruction where the forest is just, burned to a flat, like a moonscape. And then what comes back isn't the same. You don't really get the same timber, the same trees. You end up with like brush instead. So you get this gradual process of what they call a regime change, where the forest is really becoming a different kind of forest. But in some cases, particularly if a fire didn't burn too severely, you will see really amazing regeneration following a fire. And historically, I'm talking like tens of thousands of years ago, when fire just occurred naturally on the landscape and we didn't suppress it and we didn't have as much civilization, that is what would happen is fire would sort of clean out and regenerate the landscape, and you would see more trees and more plant diversity and, sort of new stands of different species in the wake of a wildfire.
Mhm. We have
So
had wildfire biologists on that have made the case that a lot of what we do in terms of quote unquote harvesting after a fire, a lot of that is sort of environmentally destructive because the forests kind of, as you say, often like to regenerate themselves and are sort of poised to do that after fires. Um,
absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Is there any doubt amongst the firefighters, the people sort of on the front lines about global warming? Um,
Um, Not that I saw on my personal crew. And, for me, well, I believed global warming was real long before I became a wildland firefighter. But
mhm,
if you ever needed proof that is
mhm,
just in your face every day, like these fires becoming more extreme, working in extreme heat, seeing like, very erratic weather patterns due to the change in global temperature. So I think most people I worked with were like, no question. But I did work with some people who were, openly conservative Trump supporters, because there's a lot of that seen, like a sort of conservative side to the Forest Service. But I never heard a single one of them, deny global warming.
mhm,
So I don't know if it was like they sort of were like juggling being socially conservative or fiscally conservative or whatever, and then believing in global warming, or if they didn't believe it, they just didn't want to say it in front of people. But in general, most people I worked with were like, look around us. This
mhm.
apocalyptic scenario that we are facing is clearly the result of climate change, because also a lot of those people, have fought fire for 20 years or more, and they've seen fires change dramatically just in that time.
Mhm. So the nature of the fire itself is changing
Oh
as the
yeah,
climate is changing.
absolutely. Yeah, more severe, bigger fires.
Mhm.
kind of every year. Well, it goes up and down a little bit, but if you track from, the year 2000 to the year 2020,
Hmm.
the statistics are very clear.
Hmm. We've been tracking the speaking of the change, the fires up in Canada, and I guess they're at what's called level 5.
Mm.
What's your reaction when you hear about a place like Canada just having sort of unprecedented fire levels?
I mean, I'm not surprised. I,
Mm.
I'm sorry that that's what's happening. I feel for them. That's really hard to deal with, and I'm sure, like us, they don't have enough resources to go around to fight those fires. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all. You're seeing hotter and drier conditions every year, and yeah, I don't know much about Canada, but I often think of it as like it's a colder and wetter place, like so that shouldn't be happening. But they do have historically they have prevalent fires and they have different fire conditions. The way that fire moves through like the boreal forest, for example, it can kind of like get into the ground cover and like reside there. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're facing the same thing we are, right? Which is that the world is getting hotter, drier, more erratic. And that's why we're seeing more fire in places like, New Jersey this year, or New York has had some fires. There's more fire in Pennsylvania. I heard that my home state of Kentucky, like my hometown of Frankfort, Kentucky, is making, defensible space plans and considering how they defend the town. And I can't even imagine, a wildfire in central Kentucky, but it's going to come. I think it's coming for all of us, especially if we don't do the preventative work that is necessary.
Do you still feel the tug, the call? I mean, when you were, especially when you went back for your second season there, it seemed like it sort of, you'd been bitten by the bug, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very enthralling and kind of addictive profession. And I've been out for a few years now and I still miss it. But I think if I were to go back in any capacity, I would go back in the realm of, fuels treatments and prescribed burning, something on the side of good fire.
Mm.
Because as much as I loved fire suppression and the job, I felt like we were constantly responding after the fact. You're responding in the crisis, in the emergency, and what I would like to do is the work that could helpfully like prevent that emergency, or ameliorate the severity of the crisis, the next wildfire. So I think I would love to go back at some point, but probably on that, good fire, intentional fire side.
So the interpersonal relationships that you described were almost as fascinating as the what you were doing there. I guess it's a really intense personal experience to be in a hotshot crew like that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. It is a bit of a crucible, so to speak, because you work these 16-hour shifts for 14 days at a time and then have just a few days off and go back. So not only are you really physically pushed to your limit, but over time, as you go on 14-day assignment after 14-day assignment, you start to wear out, mentally and emotionally too. So there can be a lot of tensions that arise. It's kind of like, if you were with your siblings stuck in a car or something, like
Okay.
you're just like, you start to butt heads with people, but also on the flip side, you basically live with these people
Mhm.
24 hours a day for 6 months. So you feel incredibly bonded and very close to them. So, yeah, all sorts of really fascinating personal dynamics will arise out of that. And for me, I had been, the only woman on my crew the first year, and then one of two women the second year. And the first year I felt like I was a bit tokenized, but I could kind of make my place. And whatever I did, it was like, okay, well, this is what a woman is like in this field because I'm the only one they have to look to, right? So
Mhm.
I really hustled, carried as much weight as I could, dug my fire line as hard as I could. And eventually they were like, okay, she's one of us. We respect her. And gender was somewhat ignored. But then you add another woman into the mix and she wants to do things differently. And that becomes very tense for the whole crew. Like nobody knows how to navigate this, and I didn't know how to navigate it, and I didn't necessarily do the best job. So yeah, it's So much just to be in those intensive work conditions
Hmm.
with the same 20 people nonstop. You're bound to have the most the most intense, I can't think of a better word, interpersonal dynamics unfold in that situation.
All right. Well, so the book is Wildfire Days, as you say, Kelly Ramsey, and who publishes this?
Scrivener, which is part of Simon and Schuster.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And
Thank you.
yeah, good luck on your book.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
And we hope you appreciated that interview. Kind of interesting the way it came to pass. Apparently, this show has reached some kind of level, has some kind of a reputation because we were actually approached by the publishing company who were like, "Hey, you might be interested in this author," and so I asked for the book. I read the book, and I was like, "Yeah, this does meet our show's goals." But it's just kind of interesting to note that we've kind of reached a level of recognition that people are actually seeking us out now. That's kind of nice. Plus, it made it really easy for me to not have to like track down a guest and saved me a lot of time. Although reading the book took a lot of time too, but I enjoyed it. Okay. Anyway, speaking of other things we enjoy is our advertisers and patrons. Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before. By maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And of course, our show is also brought to you by our patrons. And those are fantastic people who went to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our wonderful Patreon page. They scrolled through, looking at the different membership levels, chose one that fit their budget, and that's how we could afford to bring you this fantastic show every week. And so thank you to our patrons. Okay, now, Rebecca, your turn at the mic, and we're talking about bamboo.
We are, yes.
Okay.
So I did a little research this week for the 4th of July, which is coming up in a few days. And I went to the American Pyrotechnics Association website, and they told me that the original fireworks in China, you always hear, oh, the Chinese invented fireworks. And they did. And the original fireworks, which they used probably for centuries, even millennia before anyone thought to put explosives in them, were just bamboo stalks, which are hollow on the inside. So you throw a few of those on the fire, the air is going to expand and make a bang noise like a natural firecracker.
Oh, all those little chambers.
Yeah, because you heat air, that's what happens, So, yeah, and then around 600 and 900 AD, someone thought to put potassium nitrate in them. And you got bigger booms.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I thought we'd talk a little bit about bamboo for 4th of July, although it might seem counterintuitive. Bamboo is a fast-growing evergreen perennial used for construction, food, textiles, and more. So people have found there's a lot of it. It grows fast. People have thought a lot of ways to use it. It's in the Bambusoidea family. Bambusoidea family, I think. And it can grow a foot per day. The stems are called culms, and they are hollow and divided by nodes, which just look like rings from the outside. You've probably seen bamboo at some point. And they grow in branching clusters from a rhizome or underground stem, which we mentioned last week, rhizomes versus the other things that are above ground stems, but lateral. And there are 1,600 known species. 1,600. That's a lot of different kinds of bamboo. Ecologically speaking, the benefits would be they sequester carbon, stabilize the soil, and are a sustainable resource for production. Because you're not gonna run out of bamboo. It's not like plastic or something. And that's because they grow rapidly and regenerate from the roots. So fairly easy to make more bamboo if you're a bamboo plant. Also, they are a food source for many animals, including some of the big environmentalist flagship favorites like pandas and gorillas. Both rely on these primarily.
Oh, I did not know gorillas ate bamboo, huh?
Yeah, I guess the mountain ones, I think. Yeah. So drawbacks, environmentally speaking, would be that they have the potential for deforestation because people could decide, oh, bamboo, yeah, that's great. I'll cut down a whole bunch of forests, other kinds of forests to plant bamboo. Also, harmful chemicals are used in processing, sometimes in processing bamboo to other things. The monoculture reduces diversity. Like, if you're planting a whole bunch of bamboo, or actually bamboo sort of naturally tends to monoculture. It forms dense mats, which kind of block out the light and take away everything from all the other plants, which is a pretty common strategy. We talked about clover doing that too, I think, in the in the war between plants that's going on all around us quietly while we are completely unaware. So monoculture also, it reduces biodiversity and makes an ecosystem more susceptible to disease, because if you've got one thing, then it's all genetically related, it's all going to have the same susceptibility to disease. Whereas if you have a bunch of different plants, they're going to be like, oh no, that disease doesn't bother me, and you'll have something sort of able to carry the ecosystem. Threats to bamboo include, ironically, deforestation, which happens because of agriculture, logging, and urbanization. And also, there's a special concern about some species which flower and die kind of simultaneously, because if you cut them down during that, they can't regrow.
Huh.
Whereas, any other point in their life cycle, they're cool. Just cut them down, they'll come right back up. But yeah, so also climate change is a threat to bamboo because of more drought and reduced suitable areas where they like the temperature. And also, ironically, invasive species are a threat to bamboo. Although bamboo itself is invasive as heck. So it's kind of the victim and the perpetrator here in a lot of ways. You got to be careful. Bamboo is good where bamboo belongs is the overall moral of the story here.
Right. Huh. Cool. Yeah, and I know we have a few spots around here that bamboo are invading. There's a yard I've been watching on Reynolds Road there.
Oh my.
Up at the north end it's starting to threaten the house now that's on there. But there is, it's that monoculture that'll crowd out everything else. So, all right, well, thank you for that. And to be clear, we're not recommending that you throw bamboo into your barbecue to make big pops, because that's still dangerous. So
yeah, I'm not sure exactly what would happen there, and you don't have practice like Chinese villagers did.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
Welcome.
All right, on to ecological news, and the first story. This is just kind of an interesting story, and it just sort of drives home the point about how everything on our planet is interrelated and connected. And two things that you don't often think about being connected are tectonic plates and the ionosphere. So there's a story from the Lincoln Laboratory, which is part of MIT. On their website, they have a story predicting earthquakes by monitoring the ionosphere. And this was a story way back in July of 2023. But what they've done is using AI, they've created this product called QuakeCast, which is 65% accurate in actually predicting earthquakes before they happen, which is, that's almost 2/3.
That's pretty good.
Not much better than chance. And the way they do it is they look at the electron density in the ionosphere.
Oh my goodness.
Now, the ionosphere is the uppermost level of our atmosphere, and it's called the ionosphere because that's where the UV rays and the X rays from the sun strip the electrons off of the oxygen and the nitrogen, the gas molecules that are up that high.
Wow.
And so you've got is like this cloud of free electrons and all these ions that are missing electrons, and they make layers up there. And what they've discovered is that when there's a shift in a tectonic plate down, in the bowels of the Earth, that actually unbalances electrons. It sort of makes a cloud of electrons, kind of like a spark, that can push its way all the way up into the ionosphere.
Oh my goodness.
And so by counting the number of electrons using satellites, they basically can say, oh, there's a huge surge in electrons over this part of the Earth.
Who originally thought to look up there for that?
Some really smart scientist, I got to
Yeah.
say. Actually, what it is they noticed it.
Okay.
They were like, oh, they were taking the recordings of the ionosphere regularly, saying, oh, here's
Right.
a number of electrons, blah, blah, blah. And somebody was like, wait a minute. After this surge, there was an earthquake. And then they went back and looked at the old data
And that keeps happening.
and said, yeah, exactly, that keeps happening. And so they started training this QuakeCast AI on this, and this is how they're getting to a 2/3 accurate pre-earthquake prediction model. So,
Wow.
but that's just really cool. I thought that, literally the deepest, the bowels of the Earth are connected to the ionosphere directly, and we could use that to predict earthquakes.
That's amazing.
Thought that was cool. Okay, so now on to a depressing story. Oh, well, no, actually, this story is sort of depressing, but okay, I'll get to it. AP story, June 24th. Title is GOP plan to sell more than 3,200 square miles of federal lands is found to violate Senate rules. And so what's happening with the big, ugly budget bill is that the reason what they're doing is they've packed it with all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the budget, because a budget bill is not subject to filibuster. So there's no way for the Democrats to block a budget bill, no matter how bad it is. The thing is that in order to do that, the rules of the Senate say what you're doing actually has to have something to do with the budget. And so this plan to sell off our national parks and our national forests to private real estate developers actually is not related to the budget closely enough to stay in the thing, according to Elizabeth McDougal, who is the Senate parliamentarian. So this was stuck in the big ugly bill by Mike Lee. He's the chair of the Senate Energy Committee, and he's got some real estate developer friends who've made lots of donations to his campaign, and he wants to sell our parks to them. The other Republicans, interestingly enough, there's a big caucus that are opposing it because they're saying, don't sell it, Mike. Give it away. We should just give it to these real estate developers. We shouldn't make them pay for it. So there's a bit of a controversy in the Republicans about that.
Oh, my God.
But there's, of course, there's a whole bunch of other environmentally...
We should pay them to take it. Why are we making these poor people
Well,
take it for free?
You know what? That is the next step, isn't it?
Basically.
We're going to, like maybe with sports stadiums, we'll give them tax monies to tear down this forest because we want golf courses, whatever.
Dear God.
So there's a whole bunch of other stuff the parliamentarian tossed out of the budget bill. Trump is trying to revise the roadless rule, which protects national forests that are like on steep mountainslides and stuff where they've never had roads, and so that those forests are protected under current regulations. He wants to toss that out. Maria Cantwell, one of the Democrats, said, this is good that she tossed those out because most people don't want our national parks turned into luxury resorts and golf courses, but we'll see what happens. All right. So, but of course, Mike Lee is attempting to try it again. He reworded it and put it back in the bill Probably the parliamentarian will toss it out again, but we have no way of knowing. Okay. And now this next story is sort of indicative of just how insane Trump is when it comes to environmental stuff. This is Newsweek, June 20th. Trump considers asbestos ban reversal.
Oh, dear God.
Sparks warning lives at risk. Yeah. So asbestos kills, right now, kills about 40,000 Americans every year, kills about 250,000 people worldwide, including my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law actually died from mesothelioma, and if you're anyone who's watched TV, you've seen commercials about mesothelioma. And yeah, it is that bad. It's a horrible, horrible way to go. But, and the science showing the connection between asbestos exposure and mesothelioma is unassailable. There's over a century of data, and they've discovered that even one day of exposure, if it's the wrong kind of asbestos and you're a person who's genetically susceptible, one day of exposure could be enough to cause cancer. And 70 countries have banned all asbestos product. 50 countries have specifically banned the chrysolite asbestos, which is what Trump is reversing the ban on. EPA did not respond to Newsweek any questions about why they're doing this. Linda Reinstein is a woman who lost her husband to mesothelioma and created a citizens group opposed to asbestos. She put it in context. She said a lot of people didn't realize when they were voting for MAGA, they were actually voting to make asbestos great again. Not America. So, and in fact, the asbestos manufacturer, Uralesbest, has put President Trump's picture on their the bales of asbestos that they sell. He's like, that's his brand. Cancer, mesothelioma is Trump's brand now. So just whatever you think mesothelioma, think Trump.
One of my cousins' motocross buddies that he hung around with in high school or college or something was his family was in the asbestos removal business. Assuming the world survives, his business will be living on for another generation, potentially.
Well, unless
it won't be petering out.
Unless Trump gets his way, and now we have to say asbestos is fine, the way we have to say global warming's not real.
Eventually, presumably, if we live long enough, we'll wise up and want that stuff removed.
Knocking on wood there.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to pick up the pace a little here. GoErie.com. Shallow water ciscos, gone from Lake Erie for decades, may come back from northeast Pennsylvania. It's just a cool story. The cisco, the shallow cisco, common cisco is still here in Lake Erie, but there was a species called the shallow water cisco, and they're bigger than the regular ciscos. They get up to 18 inches. They eat plankton and mayflies. People who are currently shoveling mayflies off their walks might be interested in this.
Oh, Lord, I went swimming and I got out of the water, immediately became a mayfly hospice. It was terrible. I was like, go die somewhere else.
Right. Well, if we had enough of these shallow water ciscos, we might not have had that problem. But,
exactly.
But they were eliminated in the 1960s because they were overfished. They started fishing them in the 1800s.
Oh.
And for many years, decades, our cisco fishery was the largest fishery in the world, but basically they ate them all. They found this little place in Pennsylvania called Crystal Lake, and they had some stocked lake trout in there, and biologists went and looked, and they actually found the last population of these shallow water ciscos in the world that were apparently put in there to provide food for the lake trout, the stocked lake trout. So they're looking at maybe they're attempting to see if they can raise them with aquaculture right now, and they're thinking about maybe bringing them back into Lake Erie. That would be cool. Next story, not cool. Kathy Hochul, governor of New York State, drinks the radioactive Kool-Aid this past week on Twitter, or X, I should say, on Twitter.
Sadly, it's not literally drank radioactive Kool-Aid.
She made this great big announcement, we're going nuclear, and she has instructed the New York Power Authority to develop a new nuclear facility upstate in New York, which is a very telling thing because Kathy Hochul's actually from Western New York, like I am, and we actually don't. The actual people who don't live in New York City don't really say upstate because you've got Western New York, you've got the Great Lakes region, you've got Central New York, you've got, we don't say upstate the way people in Albany and New York City do, but she did. So in other words, she's just saying not near New York City, but you can put it anywhere else, which is very non-Western New York-ish. And she really, I knew her years ago. We both worked on a political campaign of a wonderful guy called Tom Fricano. And I had the group called Voters for Environmental Conservation. She was actually part of his campaign, and she was literally the only competent person in that campaign from the Democrat side. And we had a lot of conversations. She was a great person, and she just last year blocked Holtec, the evil, corrupt Holtec, from putting tritium into the Hudson River. And I thought, this is great. Somebody I know who actually still has some environmental beliefs, but no, now apparently there's been enough campaign donations or something. She's reversed her position and now is saying that nukes are zero emissions, which of course is a lie. Building a nuclear power plant takes a decade of emissions while you're building and people are driving back and forth from work and you're mining the uranium and all that stuff. And in fact, it takes so much carbon during that decade that you need to run the plant another decade before you break even on your carbon budget. So to say it's zero emissions, after 20 years you break even, but you made a decade's worth of emissions. So so that's a big fat lie. So sorry to hear about Kathy Hochul. Maybe I'll send her a sympathy card. I don't know. Next story, Texas grid, and we're finishing on positive notes here. Texas grid stable thanks to solar and battery. And this is a story from reformaustin.com on June 25th. Texas grid strengthens ahead of scorching summer thanks to renewables. And ERCOT, the organization that runs the grid in Texas, says that they're having record high demand right now, like us. But over the past 2 years, solar power has doubled and battery power has quadrupled. And solar and wind are now meeting more than half the demand for electricity in Texas during peak hours. And the chance for blackouts has dropped from 2 years ago. It was about 40%, and now it's 0.5%.
Cool.
So, and keep in mind, this is still a very conservative state. Greg Abbott is still the governor there. But as I told the Municipal Utility Board guy in Bowling Green, that the people of Texas are the ones driving this conversion, because as people were dying around them from the lack of electricity, they realized just how important having this resiliency was. And so they're investing their own private money, putting up windmills and solar panels and getting battery backups on their households. And Texas at least is conservative enough, wise enough, not to block them from doing that the way Bowling Green does. And so good news for Texas. And then our final story, a nice upbeat story. This is from the Ohio Environmental Council.org on June 26th. And Fraser Solar, the title is, Ohio Power Siting Board has approved a solar farm in Knox County, which is just, it's a dramatic reversal for, we've reported many times about how the Power Siting Board has just capriciously done away with solar farm development, often just because one or two local politicians who happen to be getting large campaign contributions from the natural gas industry or the fracking industry object to them. And so this is really kind of notable in that it's so unusual that the Ohio Power Siting Board said, yeah, go ahead. It's a 120 megawatt farm, and they actually, in their decision saying that to go ahead, they said that building this solar farm was in the public's interest, which is a point we've been trying to make for, decades. And they pointed to how the cost of solar is a lower cost of electricity, so it'll help people with their electric bills. The Ohio Environmental Council's lead attorney on this, Karen Nordstrom, said that this is a transformative moment. And so we have to hope that it is. We don't know.
I just wanted to add, by the way, I apologize to people who are maybe watching the podcast. If you can see me looking like I'm gasping or gaping with my mouth open or doing a lot of yawning or suppressed yawning, that's because I can't breathe.
Yeah.
I think it was last month. Was it last month? I had another bout of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now having it's getting to the point where not only can I not breathe very well outdoor in the heat, I can't even breathe very well in here where there's air conditioning.
Yeah, it's not good.
So I'm probably going to end up walking around on oxygen at some point.
Well, we're glad you managed to get through the hour because we're just about there.
Yeah.
If you want to send Rebecca some, sympathy, you could find her on Facebook, Rebecca Wood, or you could send an email to joe@joedemare4agreedfuture.org. And
I don't have much in the way of a filter, by the way. Just so you know.
That's true. You have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So, So anyway, back to this Fraser solar story. So we have one yes amongst, about 100 no's. A question of if this is a turning point or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But, why not hope? And it was good. It's definitely nice to be able to report on the siting board approving a solar panel instead of capriciously canceling it out. That's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. We really, really appreciate our listeners. We think you're like super intelligent, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, we do. So this is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!